I never believed in the supernatural. Ghost stories were just that, stories. But after what happened to me last summer, I'm not so sure anymore. It all started when I moved into my grandmother's old house after she passed away. The place had always given me the creeps as a kid, but I chalked it up to an overactive imagination. If only I'd known then what I know now. The first few nights were uneventful. Sure, the house creaked and groaned, but that's normal for an old Victorian, right? It wasn't until the third night that things started to feel off. I woke up around 3 a.m., that dreaded witching hour, to the sound of footsteps in the attic above my bedroom. Slow, deliberate steps that creaked across old floorboards. My heart raced as I lay frozen in bed, straining my ears. The steps stopped directly over me, and then, nothing. Silence so profound it seemed to press against my eardrums. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just the house settling, or a raccoon that had found its way inside. But deep down, I knew it was something else entirely. As the days passed, the incidents escalated. Objects would move on their own when I wasn't looking. I'd leave a room and return to find all the cabinet doors wide open. The air would suddenly turn ice cold, my breath visible even in the middle of summer. But it was the whispers that really got to me. Hushed voices just on the edge of hearing, speaking words I could almost, but not quite, understand. I tried to ignore it all, to convince myself I was imagining things. But then came the night that changed everything. I was in the kitchen, making a late-night snack, when I heard it, a child's laughter, high and sweet, coming from the basement. I froze, the knife I'd been using to spread peanut butter clattering to the floor. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" The laughter came again, followed by a sing-song voice. "Come play with me. I've been so lonely." Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out of the house and never look back. But something compelled me forward. I found myself at the top of the basement stairs, peering down into the darkness below. "Who's there?" I asked, fumbling for the light switch. The bulb flickered to life, illuminating the cluttered space. And there, sitting on an old trunk in the corner, was a little girl in a white dress. Her back was to me, long dark hair hanging down in tangles. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her voice echoing strangely in the confined space. Slowly, so slowly, she began to turn. My heart pounded in my chest, a scream building in my throat. As her face came into view, I saw nothing. Where her features should have been was only smooth, blank skin. I stumbled backward, tripping on the stairs in my haste to escape. As I fell, the light bulb exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the basement into darkness. The last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was that chilling laughter, closer now, right next to my ear. I woke up in my bed the next morning, convinced it had all been a terrible nightmare. But the bruises on my back from the fall told a different story. And there, on my nightstand, sat a small, old-fashioned doll with a porcelain face, a face that looked disturbingly like the blank visage I'd seen in the basement. I knew I should leave, but something kept me in that house. It was as if the very walls had a hold on me, drawing me deeper into whatever dark mystery lurked within. I began researching the house's history, and what I found chilled me to the bone. Decades ago, a family had lived here, a mother, father, and young daughter named Lily. The parents were found dead under mysterious circumstances, their faces frozen in expressions of utmost terror. Lily was never found. The case remained unsolved, but locals whispered about dark rituals and deals with otherworldly entities. As the days wore on, the activity in the house intensified. The walls would bleed, thick red liquid oozing from between the floorboards. I'd wake up to find cryptic symbols carved into my skin, healing with unnatural speed. And always, I could feel eyes watching me, even in empty rooms. One night, as I tossed and turned in a fitful sleep, I was jolted awake by a weight on my chest. I opened my eyes to find the little girl Lily sitting on top of me, her blank face inches from mine. "Why won't you play with me?" she asked, her voice a raspy whisper. "Don't you want to be my friend forever?" I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was paralyzed, unable to move as her featureless face began to change. A mouth opened up, wider and wider, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Just as I thought it was all over, a new voice cut through the terror. Deep, authoritative, and somehow familiar. "Lily, that's enough." The pressure on my chest vanished as the girl disappeared. I sat up, gasping for air, to find an elderly woman standing at the foot of my bed. It took me a moment to recognize her, my grandmother, exactly as she'd looked the last time I'd seen her alive. "Gran?" I choked out. "What's happening?" Her eyes were sad as she looked at me. "I'm so sorry, dear. I never wanted you to get caught up in this. But now that you're here, you have a choice to make." "What choice? What's going on?" She sighed, a sound full of ancient weariness. "This house, it's a gateway. A doorway between worlds. And it needs a guardian. I've been holding it closed for so long, but my time is done. Now it falls to you." I shook my head, unable to process what she was saying. "I don't understand." "What do you mean, a gateway?" "There are things in the dark, child. Things that want to come through. If the door opens fully, it will mean the end of everything. Someone has to keep it shut, to bear the weight of holding back the darkness." As she spoke, the room began to change. The walls melted away, revealing a swirling vortex of shadows and half-formed monstrosities. I could hear them whispering, promising power beyond imagination if I just let them in. "You have a choice," my grandmother said. "You can leave now, walk away, and try to forget. But the gate will open, and what comes through will make the horrors you've seen so far seem like child's play. Or you can stay, become the new guardian. It's a heavy burden, but one our family has borne for generations." I stared at her, my mind reeling. And if I stay? What happens then? And then, just as I thought I would be lost forever in that maelstrom of cosmic horror, everything went still. The chaos faded, leaving me standing alone in my bedroom. But I knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. The house was quiet now, but it was the quiet of a predator waiting to strike. I could feel it watching me, assessing me. Whatever force had been unleashed, whatever cosmic balance had shifted, I was now at the center of it all. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through my window, I realized that my ordeal was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The true terror, the real test of my sanity and my soul, lay ahead. I picked up the old doll from my nightstand, its porcelain face now cracked and leaking a dark, viscous fluid. As I stared into its glassy eyes, I heard a whisper not from the doll, but from somewhere deep inside myself. "Welcome to the family business," it said. "Hope you're ready for a lifetime of nightmares." I set the doll down, my hand trembling. Whatever I'd gotten myself into, whatever cosmic horror show I now found myself starring in, one thing was clear: sleep would no longer be a refuge. For in my dreams, I knew I would find terrors beyond imagination. And so, as the sun rose on a world that looked the same but felt fundamentally changed, I began to prepare myself. For what? I wasn't sure. But I knew that the true scary stories, the ones that would keep me up at night for the rest of my life, were only just beginning. The doll's eyes seemed to follow me as I moved around the room, gathering supplies for, what? An exorcism? A cosmic war? I had no idea. But I knew I couldn't face whatever was coming unprepared. As I stuffed clothes and mystical-looking trinkets into a bag, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the person staring back at me. My eyes were wild, my hair a tangled mess. But there was something else, something new in my gaze. A knowledge, a power, that hadn't been there before. I turned away from my reflection, unable to face the changes I saw there. But as I did, I noticed something on my arm. A mark, like a tattoo, but one I definitely hadn't gotten myself. It was shifting, changing even as I watched, forming intricate patterns that seemed to hold meanings just beyond my comprehension. A sudden knock at the door made me jump. I froze, listening intently. It came again, more insistent this time. "Hello?" a voice called out. "Is anyone home? We're with the police. We've had reports of disturbances at this address." I approached the door cautiously, my heart pounding. Through the peephole, I could see 2 officers standing on my porch. They looked normal enough, but after everything I'd seen, I knew appearances could be deceiving. "Can I help you?" I called out, not opening the door. The officers exchanged a glance. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to open the door. We have some questions about the incidents that have been reported in this area." My mind raced. What incidents? Had the neighbors seen something? Or was this something else entirely? "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not feeling well. Could you come back later?" The officer's expressions hardened. "Ma'am, open the door now or we'll be forced to break it down." Lily's form began to fade, but before she disappeared entirely, she left me with one last chilling message: "Sleep well, guardian. For in your dreams, the real war begins." As her laughter echoed through the now empty house, I realized that my life as I knew it was over. I was part of something bigger now, something ancient and terrifying. A war against forces beyond human comprehension, fought in the shadows and the spaces between reality. I looked down at the mark on my arm, still pulsing with otherworldly light. Whatever was coming, whatever horrors awaited me in my dreams and in the waking world, I knew one thing for certain: the truly disturbing and terrifying scary stories? They were only just beginning. As the echoes of Lily's laughter faded, I found myself alone in the silent house, my mind reeling from the events that had just transpired. The mark on my arm pulsed with an otherworldly glow, a constant reminder of the burden I now carried. Sleep, I knew, would bring no respite. Only more horrors awaited me in the realm of dreams. With trembling hands, I began to barricade the shattered front door. As I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Eyes seemed to peer at me from every shadow, every darkened corner. The house itself felt alive, its very walls thrumming with an energy I was only beginning to understand. As night fell, I retreated to my bedroom, clutching the knife I'd grabbed earlier. I knew it would be useless against the terrors that awaited me, but its solid weight in my hand provided a small measure of comfort. Sleep tugged at my consciousness, my body desperate for rest after the ordeal. But I fought it, afraid of what lurked in the depths of my subconscious. Eventually, exhaustion won out. As my eyes drifted closed, I felt a shift in the air around me. The bedroom melted away, replaced by a vast, otherworldly landscape. The sky above was a swirling vortex of colors that hurt to look at, while the ground beneath my feet seemed to breathe and pulse like a living thing. "Welcome, Guardian," a voice boomed from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Your training begins now." A figure materialized before me, tall and imposing. Its form was constantly shifting, one moment appearing human, the next a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes. I recoiled, but found myself unable to move. Who are you?" I managed to stammer out. The being's laughter shook the very fabric of this dream realm. "I am many things. Teacher, warden, executioner. But you may call me the Keeper. I am here to show you the true nature of your duty." With a wave of its appendage, the landscape changed. I found myself standing in a familiar street, but everything was wrong. The houses were twisted parodies of themselves, their windows eyes that followed my every move. The sky rained blood, and from every shadow, I could hear the screams of the damned. "This is what awaits if you fail," the Keeper intoned. "The barriers between worlds are thin, and growing thinner. Your task is to maintain them, to keep the horrors at bay." As it spoke, I saw shapes moving in the distance. Grotesque creatures that defied description, their very existence an affront to sanity. They surged towards us, a tide of nightmare made flesh. "Defend yourself," the Keeper commanded. "Use the power within you." I raised my hands, not knowing what to do. The mark on my arm blazed to life, and instinctively, I spoke words in a language I didn't understand. A barrier of shimmering energy erupted from my palms, holding the monstrosities at bay. But it wasn't enough. They pressed against my defenses, their inhuman shrieks piercing my skull. I felt my will beginning to crumble under the assault. "Focus," the Keeper roared. "You are the Guardian. This realm bends to your will." Drawing upon reserves of strength I didn't know I possessed, I pushed back. The barrier expanded, engulfing the creatures in searing light. Their screams reached a fever pitch before cutting off abruptly as they disintegrated into ash. I fell to my knees, gasping for breath. The Keeper loomed over me, its form now that of a towering shadow with gleaming red eyes. "A passable first attempt," it said. "But you have much to learn. The real challenges are yet to come." With those ominous words, the dream realm began to dissolve. I felt myself being pulled back to consciousness, my body drenched in cold sweat as I jolted awake. The first rays of dawn were peeking through my window, but I felt no relief. The memory of the dream clung to me like a shroud, and I knew that what I'd experienced was more than just a nightmare. It was a glimpse of the war I was now a part of. As I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, I caught sight of my reflection. I barely recognized myself. My eyes held a haunted look, and there were streaks of gray in my hair that hadn't been there before. The mark on my arm had changed too, its intricate patterns now extending halfway up my bicep. A soft giggle behind me made me whirl around. Lily stood there, her featureless face somehow managing to convey amusement. "How does it feel?" she asked, her head tilting to one side. "To bear the weight of worlds on your shoulders?" I slumped against the sink, suddenly feeling every moment of the centuries-old burden I'd inherited. "Why me?" I asked. "Why our family?" Lily's form flickered, briefly taking on the appearance of my grandmother before settling back into the child's shape. "Some are born to greatness," she said, her voice a mix of youthful innocence and ancient wisdom. "Others have it thrust upon them. Your bloodline has always stood at the crossroads of realities. It is both your curse and your destiny." Before I could respond, a deep, resonant tone filled the air. It was the same sound I'd heard the night before, when reality had first fractured around me. Lily's form began to fade. "They're coming," she warned. "Stronger this time. Are you ready, Guardian?" As she disappeared, I felt the house shudder around me. The walls began to bleed, thick black ichor oozing from between the floorboards. The mirror cracked, each fragment reflecting a different nightmare realm. I staggered out of the bathroom, my heart pounding. The living room had transformed into a grotesque parody of itself. The furniture writhed with a life of its own, and the ceiling had become a gaping maw lined with razor-sharp teeth. From every shadow, every dark corner, I could hear them coming. Scratching, skittering, crawling their way into our reality. The barrier between worlds was collapsing, and I was the only thing standing in their way. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I could feel the power within me, the legacy of generations of guardians flowing through my veins. When I opened my eyes again, they blazed with eldritch fire. "Come on then," I growled, the words echoing with power. "Let's see what you've got." The shadows erupted, disgorging creatures beyond imagination. Tentacled monstrosities, beings of pure darkness, things with too many eyes and not enough skin. They surged towards me, a tide of horror that threatened to overwhelm my sanity. But I stood my ground. The mark on my arm blazed to life, its light holding the creatures at bay. Words of power spilled from my lips, each syllable burning the air and making reality itself shudder. I fought with everything I had, drawing upon knowledge I didn't know I possessed. Each creature I banished was replaced by two more, each more horrifying than the last. I could feel my strength waning, the sheer weight of the cosmic forces I was holding back threatening to crush me. The creatures recoiled, shrieking in agony as they were forced back. The walls of the house groaned and shifted, the very fabric of space-time straining under the pressure of our combined will. With a sound like the universe itself tearing apart, the horde was banished. The rift slammed shut, reality reasserting itself with a finality that left me gasping for breath. As the last echoes of our victory faded, I found myself alone once more. The house was quiet, the furniture back to normal, no sign of the cosmic battle that had just taken place. But I could feel the change in myself, in the very air around me. I sank to my knees, exhausted beyond measure. The mark on my arm had expanded again, now covering most of my upper body in intricate, shifting patterns. I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that this was only the beginning. As I struggled to my feet, I caught sight of my reflection in a nearby mirror. The person staring back at me was changed, aged beyond my years by the weight of cosmic responsibility. But there was a strength there too, a determination that hadn't existed before. "Well done," Lily's voice whispered from the shadows. "But remember, Guardian, they'll be back. They always come back." I nodded, a grim smile playing across my lips. And I'll be waiting. As the first light of a new day streamed through the windows, I began to prepare. I knew now that my life would never be the same. Every night would bring new horrors, new challenges to overcome. The war against the darkness would never truly end. But I was ready. I was the guardian, the protector of the veil between worlds. And no matter what terrors awaited me in the shadows or in my dreams, I would face them head on. For I had seen the truth behind the veil, the cosmic horrors that lurked just beyond our reality. And I knew that the most disturbing, the most terrifying scary stories weren't just tales to keep you up at night. They were warnings. Glimpses of a truth too horrifying for most to comprehend. As I set about fortifying the house, preparing for the battles to come, I couldn't help but smile. The old me would have been paralyzed with fear. But now I felt alive, purposeful in a way I never had before. Let them come, I thought. Let the nightmares and the cosmic horrors throw everything they had at me. I would stand firm, the last line of defense between our world and the terrors beyond. For I was the guardian, keeper of the veil, protector of reality itself. And my story? It was just beginning. As night fell once more, I settled into a chair facing the door, the mystical sigils I'd drawn pulsing with ethereal light. The knife I'd used before was replaced with an ancient tome I'd found hidden in the attic, its pages filled with knowledge that both thrilled and terrified me. I could feel them out there, pressing against the boundaries of our world, hungry for a way in. But I was ready. Come what may, I would face it. For in the end, I realized the most terrifying thing wasn't the monsters or the cosmic horrors. It was the knowledge. The understanding of what truly lurked in the darkness, and the responsibility that came with it. As the clock struck midnight, I felt the familiar shift in the air. The battle was about to begin anew. I stood, the mark on my body blazing to life, words of power on my lips. Come on then, I whispered to the encroaching darkness. Show me what nightmares you've got for me tonight. And as reality began to fracture around me once more, I knew that the true horror story, my story, was far from over. It was, in fact, only just beginning. The walls of the house began to pulse, shadows writhing with a life of their own. I could hear whispers, promises of power and knowledge beyond mortal comprehension. But I stood firm, my resolve unshaken. For I had seen behind the veil, glimpsed the truths that lay beyond our fragile reality. And though the horrors that awaited me were beyond imagination, I would face them. Not just for myself, but for all those who slept peacefully, unaware of the cosmic terrors that lurked just beyond the threshold of their perception. As the first wave of nightmares began to materialize, I raised my hands, ancient words of power spilling from my lips. The battle was joined once more, a never-ending struggle against forces beyond comprehension. But I was ready. I was the guardian, the keeper of the veil, the protector of reality itself. And my story, the most terrifying and disturbing tale of all, was far from over. It was, in fact, only just beginning.